pop culture, and the quirkier side of life. The Todd Starnes Commentary.
One of our astute listeners sent me a Facebook message the other day alerting me to a Diversity Day celebration at the Los Angeles Air Force Base. Part of the festivities included a performance by a well-known drag queen group. The listener even sent pictures featuring Jules and the Brunchettes, sporting giant wigs and form-fitting dresses. You can check it out for yourself at toddstarnes.com. Anyway, the Air Force tells me there's nothing wrong with having drag queens on base. They say that going drag is a symbol of gay pride. The military says Diversity Day is a way to foster equality and diversity in the workplace. That's why they saluted Southern Americans by hosting a group of cloggers. Because apparently the United States Air Force seems to think we're a bunch of backwoods rednecks who drink moonshine and howl at the moon. How's that for tolerance? I'm Todd Starnes.
Todd Starnes. Appreciate you. Thank you very much. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth proudly on. Say it with me now. AFR Talk. Don't have a case of the Mondays, even if the fax machine is not working appropriately. What is that? Okay. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. You've heard a lot about immigration reform. And we even have it characterized as, well, there's the characterization that if you're against it, you don't like brown people. There's the characterization that if you're against it, you don't like kids, and brown kids for that matter. And you know that I don't like talking about ethnicity and race. I want American, don't hyphen. But when we are dealing with these things, those two statements are dodges. They're trying to get you away from the substance of what immigration reform is. And to fully understand what immigration reform is, we bring on the expert, the director of research at the Center for Immigration Studies, Stephen Camarota. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to start you out with, don't take this wrong, I feel like a bartender who's serving up Congress here and their clips. And here it is. This is Chuck Schumer talking about immigration reform and how it's gaining traction. They have a bunch of alliances, and this thing's going to happen, he believes. He's on Morning Joe, and that's on MSNBC, which is a network. Some people don't know about this according to the ratings, but they have a network over there. And their show, Morning Joe, has Joe Scarborough, former Republican congressman, and he's talking to Senator from New York, Chuck Schumer. Roll it.
Get things done. I'm a little more optimistic. First, I think we're going to get an immigration bill. I see the green sprouts, so to speak. Republican leadership is talking about things they didn't before.
Like what?
Like some form of path to citizenship, whether it's a DREAM Act or allowing those who cross the border illegally to use existing means. That's not as far as we would go. There's lots of people this August, businesses, evangelical churches, growers, farmers, lobbying their Congress members. A whole bunch now have come out for immigration reform who are Republican House members. I think we're going to get a bill, and I think that Speaker Boehner, Leader McConnell know it's the right thing to do.
Even through the House, you think there's going to be a pathway to citizenship?
I think there'll be a bill that both sides can support at the end of the day. I think the Republican Party knows deep in its heart that if they stay anti-immigrant, they're a minority party. I also think the economic conservatives are for this strongly, whether it's the Cato Institute or the Wall Street Journal editorial page.
All right, so you heard a lot of it there. So Dr. Stephen Camarota, what is the diagnosis of Charles Schumer's statement? True, not true?
Well, look, if you were to just step back and say, where is all the big money? Where's corporate money? Where is sort of the leadership of the Republican Party? Where is all the money coming from unions? Where is all the money coming from liberal foundations? In terms of money, whether it's corporate money on the right or liberal money on the left from all these liberal foundations and unions, you would have to say the money and the political muscle behind the amnesty and the doubling of legal immigration, which is what this bill does, despite the record unemployment, you'd have to say, geez, that thing has a chance. However, I would say that no, he's wrong. I mean, it doesn't look like most Americans, this is not what they want. They want the law enforced first and then come back and consider if we want to have an amnesty for some folks. And most Americans do not want a dramatic increase in legal immigration. Remember, right now, we allow 1.1 million new legal immigrants into the country each year to settle here permanently, and they can eventually become citizens if they want, and then several 100,000 long-term guest workers, and then foreign students, and then, of course, tens of millions of foreign visitors. So the level of immigration is extraordinarily high, as your listeners might know. The number of immigrants in the United States has gone from about 10 million in 1970 as a total population to about 42 million, 41 million today. So it's really spectacular growth in the immigrant population. And I don't think there's many people out there who think what we really need is to dramatically increase the number, especially when you look at the unemployment rate, whether the regular unemployment rate, the broad measure, which includes people who are forced to work part-time or haven't looked recently, or if we look at the number of people, who just aren't working, whether they're looking or not. These are all at record levels. There's about 57, 58 million native-born people who are of working age not working right now. There's just no evidence that America needs short of workers. If employers really are having trouble, they just need to raise wages. On the other interesting question is, of course, I think most Republicans get, even if the leadership doesn't, that immigration is serving as an enormous voter registration drive for the Democrats. If legal immigration continues at the current level, it's very difficult to see how conservatives survive, particularly small government conservatives, because the immigrants are voting about 3-1 for big government. It doesn't make them bad people. It doesn't mean that some aren't religious. It doesn't mean we know that lots of native-born Americans agree. But the reason people like Schumer are so enthusiastic is he gets it. Immigration is shifting the national electorate towards the Democratic Party. And it's nothing to do with immigration and the Republicans' position on immigration. We know from surveys when you ask Hispanics and Asians, do you want a government that does more and spends more, or a government that does less and spends less? You always find that they say they very much want a government that does more and spends more. It's partly because of the countries they come from and several other reasons. But the bottom line is, if immigration is allowed to continue like this, it's very hard to see how conservatives win. And if this bill passes with all of its amnesty and accelerated immigration, well, it pretty much is the death knell for the Republican Party in an even shorter term. And these are questions Republicans are going to have to ask, is how do they survive if immigration continues to remake the national electorate away and add so many voters who don't agree with them?
It surprises me. Let's go specifically to the numbers of folks who want more government.
Yeah.
What do we know about specifically illegal immigrants and legal immigrants from south of the border,
right?
And the cost, because we're dealing with the growth of government. Go ahead.
Yeah, there are different questions. Do immigrants pay enough in taxes to cover their consumption of public services? It's an interesting question. I often focus on that in my research. There is some contention in that issue, but basically what that research shows is that people who come to the United States with relatively little education don't make much money. They don't pay that much in taxes, and that's the way our system works, but they, and very often their U.S.-born children, qualify for services. The most costly group is legal immigrants who don't have a lot of education, probably followed by illegal immigrants. But the reason the illegals create a cost is that we think about 70-80% have no education beyond high school, so that mainly reflects their education levels, whereas college-educated legal immigrants would pay significantly more in taxes than they use in services. Now, on the question of what they want, though, in general, immigrants choose, Asian and Hispanic immigrants in particular, but there's evidence that the European immigrants, who are a very small group now and don't really matter much politically, but those two groups overwhelmingly choose when asked, how do you want the budget balanced? Do you want it balanced mostly by raising taxes or cutting services? They usually pick 2-1. They want it by raising taxes rather than cutting services. The Pew Hispanic Center and the Pew Research Center have asked questions like, do you want a government that does more and provides more services, or a government that does less and provides fewer services? And about 3-1 for Hispanics is about 75% say they want a government that does more and spends more. Again, that's not outside the political mainstream in the United States, but that means, unavoidably, immigration is adding more voters who want that. Just one other thing, take Obamacare,
Sure.
Very controversial. The groups that support it the most tend to be Hispanics and Asians and African Americans as well, but not a large component of that is immigrant. So, again, you're adding a lot more voters who support Obamacare, and at the same time the Republicans are trying to curtail or undo it and hold that program at bay, but they're kind of stupid, and the Republican leadership thinks you can do that and add many more voters through legal immigration, and I emphasize it's legal immigration, who want to preserve Obamacare. It doesn't really make much sense, and I think the Republicans themselves, whether rank and file or leadership, senses immigration is a great deal for Democrats, particularly liberal Democrats, but the Republicans don't know how to talk about the issue, and they don't know what to do about it, and they need to be thinking about it. The Democrats' unanimity on this issue reflects their correct opinion that immigration fundamentally is adding voters to the Democratic base.
How would you present this and not be portrayed as anti-immigrant?
Right. I mean, I think that, look, most Americans see immigration as creating both costs and benefits. And what you would say is, look, as a country, we need a more go slow approach. You'd point out that, look, we have a situation now where 1 out of every 3 children who lives in poverty today lives in an immigrant household. 1/3 of all the people without health insurance in the United States are either an immigrant or the young child of an immigrant. What we need is a slower pace. We need to, instead of bringing in 11 million new legal immigrants each year, that number should be more like 3 or 4 million. We should allow the spouses and minor children of U.S. citizens. So, in other words, if you marry a foreigner, that person should come in. Some number of skilled, maybe 40, 50,000 skilled immigrants, and then maybe some refugees, but not the extended family that we allow and so forth. Bring those. Now, we actually even run a lottery where you basically put your name into a hat and we give away 50,000 visas a year under that system. What we need is a system that puts the American interest first. Right now, we don't need the workers. We want to create a level of immigration that facilitates the integration and assimilation of immigrants, help them learn our language, and also doesn't create a new wave of immigrants keep coming in who puts more pressure on the wave that just came in the previous years. We want to let wages rise at the bottom end of the U.S. labor market where things have taken a beating. Basically, if you had to put it into a slogan economically to employers, it's raise the pay. We know there's lots of jobs that used to pay more, pay less now, and things like that. And that's what I'd emphasize.
Dr. Stephen Camarota, and people just heard why people are not willing to come on and debate you. It's because you got a lot of facts backing your case. You've got history. You record it. You are the Director of Research at the Center for Immigration Studies, and you do a fantastic job. We appreciate you, Steve. Thanks so much.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Always, buddy. Take care. All right, now what we're going to do, Reince Priebus goes back and forth with Candy Crawley on Shutdown, AFR Talk.